Tribe Builders. This is Tanya Rooney, and I'm so stoked for today's guest. She is super fucking awesome. And I remember actually the first time I ever met her, I was at Level Up Your Listing, and hopefully this doesn't embarrass her, but I remember watching her fan out over one of my friends because I've got this friend named Wendy that had this huge persona on the internet for a while, and I mean, she deserves it. She was flipping houses. Her name was Flipping Wendy at that time. Now she does short-term rentals. But I literally watched Brindy get so excited that she could meet Wendy, and now we're all friends, so it's so fun. And I've been watching Brindy for a couple of years now, and she's really, really great at hosting. She is in the Arizona market, and she's just an absolute delight. So I'm excited to introduce Brindy Bringhurst. Hi, how are you?
Thanks, Tanya. Yep, nope, not embarrassed. I'm proud of it. Yeah,
You were fanned out. It was so fun to watch. I'm like, oh my God, Wendy, she just fanned out over you. And she's like, she did? No, she didn't. I'm like, yeah, she did.
yeah. I mean, Wendy was the very, very first person I found on social before I even knew that there were other Airbnb hosts or other people doing anything like what I was doing. So she does have a special spot and always will.
I love it. 'Cause she's totally the person that'd be like, no, that's not true. Nobody cares
Yeah.
about me. And she's absolutely amazing, and she's one of my favorite people to watch. So,
I think it
but
embarrasses her more than it embarrasses me. So there you go.
oh yeah, oh it totally does. Oh gosh, poor Wend. All right. So tell me about your businesses. Like what you got going on. What are you awesome for?
Yep. So I am first and foremost a full-time short-term rental co-host and manager. So got started with a couple of, same story that you've heard 100 times. Got started hosting my own home, started hosting just very organically for other owners. Eventually quit my full-time job in January of 2020 to do this full time. So yeah, I quit at a very precarious time. It actually was perfect timing now looking back. We know how all that went. But so yeah, started January 2020 doing this full time. Now I manage 18 homes all over Arizona. And that's the main thing I do. I've built an Instagram community, Air Brindy, and do a little bit of coaching. Uh, but I do think of myself as a co-host and manager first for now, at least.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love that I got to find out who you were and then see you bopping around on on Instagram.
That's
And
what I
it's
do.
so
I pop
fun.
around.
That's the best way to put it. It's so funny because Instagram has become such a different part of our lives that, very unexpected from when, maybe we were younger. And
Mhm.
now I watch some of the things that you do and I'm like, it's so fun to watch people that give you something that you resonate with so much. Like literally these little tiny quips you do here and there that it's like, these are all the random things I picked up today while I was at my short-term rental because that's 100%. It's so relatable
So
of,
people.
you walk
Yeah.
around and you're just like, what is this weird garbage in my pocket? Oh, I was at the
Yep.
rental today.
I know. And that is the magic in it. It is an interesting place. It's like, I always say I have two Instagram accomplishments that I'm really proud of. And one was when I didn't look at Instagram for 90 days, didn't even look at it. I did like an Instagram fast for 90 days. And then the other one is when I posted on Instagram every day for 30 days straight. So it's just like so interesting the the spectrum of Instagram, where on one end the accomplishment is staying away, and then on the other end is engaging with it daily. And so, anyways, it's a trip. Overall, I think it's really wonderful. We wouldn't know each other, and I wouldn't know a lot of people who are in my life had if it didn't exist, but
Yeah.
definitely need to have some boundaries with it also.
Yeah, definitely. What do you feel like you got out of the 90 days that you weren't on it? Like I'm assuming it was about peace of mind and trying to check out of things. So what did that look like?
Yeah, that was really early on. Like that would have, I think I already had my business Instagram, but it was before I was really focusing very much on that. And so it was really a reset because I was in, and I still find myself doing it now and I have to take a step back. But I was just in one of those states where I immediately went to my phone and found myself in an Instagram scroll hole with every spare minute. And it just was kind of spooky. And I was actually working with a therapist at the time, and she was the one who recommended it. And I was a little offended. I was like, I don't have a problem with Instagram. I like it. Like I appreciate the beautiful things that I see, And so I was very resistant to it. And it took me some time, but finally I agreed to do that. And so yeah, it was just like for me at that time, I just needed a reset and needed to stop consuming at the rate that I was. I feel like, I don't think I realized this at the time, but it was really robbing me of my creativity because I was just turning into this Instagram scrolling zombie, uh, rather than putting out.
That's
Yeah,
crazy. Well, yeah, you're right. If you're only engrossed in other people's creativity, you don't have time for your own.
yeah, yeah. I think that's
And
true.
what do you feel like you got out of like the 30 days every day posting? Did you grow your following? Like, what did that look like?
Yep, that was before the 30-day posting challenge, which all came about because I was part of an online community that I was wanting to grow my business. And Instagram was the thing that I enjoyed the most. But prior to that, I was really afraid to show my face on Instagram, which is funny because now that's like all of my content. But at the time, all of my content was photos of the homes that I had been designing and of my short-term rentals, of nature. My face was not on my business Instagram. And I did have a personal Instagram where I would do the things that you do on your personal Instagram, like fun with friends, these sorts of things. And that felt fine. But like putting my face on my business Instagram, there was like a block there. And I really didn't have a ton of interest in getting past the block. I was like, well, that's fine. My business is different and I want to I don't know, it felt like that was okay. But the 30, and not to say that it's not okay for someone else, but what was cool about the 30-day posting is I realized that it was just a confidence thing. It was about me not really owning my business and my place in my business. And so the 30 days of posting every day really got me past that. And by the end of it, I had no problem showing my face on it gave me a lot of freedom, honestly, because it was like now all of a sudden there's so much more I can share, so much more I can do because I'm not afraid to put my face on my business Instagram. So,
That's awesome. Well, good for you. I mean, it clearly has done some stuff for you because you don't get like I'm very curious actually if you want to talk about how did you go from, hosting your own houses to 18? Like that's not a small number. I feel like that takes a lot of work to find the clients that you have, and has Instagram affected it, or what did that look like?
yeah, I feel like the Instagram hasn't it's been such a slow but steady climb with Instagram because when I first started, it was 2017 was when I started with my own home. 2020 was when at the time I think I had 4 properties that I was managing for other owners, and that's when I quit my job. And I really feel like up through 2022, word of mouth got you really far in this business, especially maybe in the market that I'm in. Arizona, Scottsdale, Phoenix. And so a lot of that growth wasn't necessarily through Instagram. It was just word of mouth, people that I knew. However, I can't help but think that the portfolio I was building on Instagram did a lot to back me up. So maybe like the recommendation was coming from somebody, but then they were able to go look at my Instagram and be like, "Oh, she's legit," or she's real. She's not like there's a reputation here, perhaps. But it's really only been the last year that I've started to see clients come out of Instagram, which has been really rewarding and a whole other kind of call it magic. And what I'm realizing is the people I just signed on a new client actually, and she's been following me on Instagram for years. And so without even realizing it, I was building this relationship with somebody who would eventually become my client. And I think what's so cool about that is she's so aligned with my business because she wants to work with me because of who I am, because of what I've been sharing on Instagram. And so where previously, and I think I'm getting off track a little bit of your question, but now I can't
Mm,
stop.
that's all
Like
right.
previously it was like I had this resistance to showing up fully online on Instagram because I knew some of my clients might be watching and I didn't want them to know about my bad days or I didn't want them to know that I was struggling with something. And then
Hmm.
then this like total flip where now my clients are with me because of that, because that's
Hmm.
what's there. And that's I'm at the very beginning of it and it feels very exciting because it's like, wow, if my whole business could be working with clients who are with me because of all the things that I am, not just my good days, but like they're totally cool with me having the
Yep.
rough days too, then and everything in between, just like to be a full person, not just be this like business avatar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And actually it's interesting because I see it as they're seeing you problem solve real time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what I mean, people need to know that that's what we do as hosts. Like, we don't know what the heck is gonna happen. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? Some of the stuff that we hear, like I hear about all this stuff all the time because I talk to a lot of hosts, that you can't even dream some of this shit up. You're like, what? Like, I can't even, how did you guys even do this? And you have to problem solve it every time. So I think that's one of the cool things about being authentic on an Instagram. Like, I mean, social media is, it's here, like it's here to stay, guys.
Yep.
For now, it's like a thing, whether it is
Totally.
in 10 years or not. But I think showing people, like, yeah, we have crappy days too. I'm not just showing
Yeah.
the highlight reel, and I
Yeah.
can problem solve the shit out of this. And you might
Totally.
have to watch me problem solve it because we're
Right.
figuring it out together.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing with, at the beginning of Instagram, I was so focused on the growth and I remember just always refreshing my page like, did I get any new followers today? Like I was very focused on that. And it does feel really good the last year to realizing that, and you hear it all the time. It's one of these cliches that like it really doesn't mean a ton, the number of followers that you have. It's
Hmm.
really the engagement and what you're getting out of that following. And I think that's really I'm realizing how true that is because however many followers don't mean anything if they're not actually resonating with your content and engaging with it. So I think that feels really good to see where it's really not like I do want to be growing. I think that's an important indicator of it's an indicator of something of the health of my business in some shape or form, but I don't think that means it needs to be like growth. I think it just means like super steady, organic, even slow growth over
Yeah.
time, I think is good.
Consistent.
Yeah, consistent, right?
Consistency is like is huge. I feel like the further in you get to business, you realize that you might have to do some little sprints here and there, but all of it's a marathon. And it's like an ultra marathon. It's, the 300 miler in however many days, because this is like, you just keep going. Like, because you don't know, like, you
Yeah,
think you know everything in the first few months because you really go through it in the first few months, but then you get a few years in and you're like, nope, all the same. You just keep on. How can I pivot and problem solve today?
it's very funny that you say that because I think of that exact analogy often. I've actually run a few ultra marathons, and so it's like very crystal clear in my mind what that feels like of like the moment when you're ahead of pace, a quarter of the way through the race, and it's like, wow, I'm doing amazing. Like, I'm probably going to get first place. Like, I'm
Oh,
probably going to win this
no.
entire race. And then it's like, nope. If you're ahead of pace and if you're going faster than you expected, well, there's a pretty sure you're gonna have a total bonk and gonna be in some pain and might not finish actually.
Yeah, faster than expected is not good in running.
Yeah,
Because you're like, oh,
exactly.
that means I'm going to be really tired soon.
Yeah, you're just unable to continue.
Oh, the adrenaline. Can you tell me, so you've built all these businesses and it sounds like you just keep going, which is a really, really good thing in business. Can you tell me if you have self-limiting beliefs in your business or just in life?
This is something I've been exploring. I've been doing a lot of, yeah, in my yeah, archaeology brain work, whatever, yeah, digging through my brain to figure out this stuff. I think it's really important to sort through like what are the core beliefs that are my operating system that whether I realize it or not are determining everything that I do every day. And yeah, I think a big one for me that I'm actively working on right now is this belief that in order to make money, I have to work really hard and be borderline miserable. And just like be exhausted. And that unless I'm working super hard and am exhausted, I won't make money. So I think it's interesting because I have another, I think, I don't know if it's fair to, I have other beliefs that actively contradict that. But when I'm really honest with myself, that one is still kind of playing in my brain.
Interesting. And how do you deal with it? Because clearly you've kept going, but I don't know, maybe you're super exhausted right now. But tell me, like, how have you been working through it?
I try to be very, I try to like, I find ways to be really aware of where I'm at. And I think it's a combination of giving myself like quiet time during the day, but then also just having the right groups of people who I'm having the right conversations with. I learned so much through conversation. It's one of the reasons I love doing podcasts because it's just like in talking, I learned so much about myself and other people as well. And it's like, but I really do learn a lot about myself and what I end up expressing through conversation. And so I think it's just a lot of awareness of like, oh, realizing I don't think I can do that because I need to work harder. But something I've been playing with that I just read in a book that I've been reading is when you realize you're operating underneath a core belief that you want to shift, just imagine feeling completely opposite. So imagine, so when I have a moment where I'm just like exhausted and I feel like I have to keep going or else I'm going to fail. Imagine what it would feel like to feel the complete opposite. So imagine what it would feel like to feel like this can be easy. I can feel rested and rejuvenated while working to earn however much money I want to earn. And just play with it. Like just imagine what would it feel like to feel that. And it can be really hard sometimes to get in that headspace, like really resistant. My brain will fight me a lot on it, but usually I can get there even if it's just total imaginative, like not in my world at all. But I think there's something to stretching your brain in that way. And I think over time, I think that has some effect. So that's what I've been doing, and it's kind of fun actually.
That's awesome. I mean, there's so many different tactics to do what we do. And, some people just are really good at getting through things and some people get really caught up in it. So it's interesting to me to listen to people's reactions to those kinds of questions. I
Yeah,
love it.
I definitely don't have like I feel like a younger version of me, I could push through it, push through that like exhaustive state almost without even realizing it. Like I didn't even realize I was exhausted. And I don't have that anymore. And I'm grateful for that. And I don't even think it's because I'm not as strong or as powerful as I was when I was younger. I think I am just a lot more aware of my limits. And so when I do start to get to that point, I feel like I used to just work harder, 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 to kind of, oh, if I finish this, then I'll be done. And I've realized it never works like that. You're never finished. Like there's always more that comes. And so now I definitely have an opposite response where it's like when I feel that exhaustion coming on, that's exactly when I take like the morning off or I take a day off or I read instead of working or I rarely nap, but I will lay down and close my eyes.
I think that's awesome. It's good. I mean, the way we evolve in our businesses, it's good to just know that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
like business isn't for the faint of heart, so you got to figure out something and instead of burning yourself out completely, because more work doesn't
truly,
equal more success.
truly, it is not for the faint of heart. I always say business is like owning your own business is soul work. Like there's just no way around it.
Oh, I love that. It's kind of true. You find out the kind of human being you are.
Hmm.
Oh, can you tell me, okay, where is so I talk a lot about communities and how important it is. Can you tell me about a random place you've met a friend or an advisor and like the story around it? Like somebody that's really like they've changed your business or changed your life and it was the most seemingly random connection that you've made that you're like, "Oh, well, this happened."
Ooh, yeah, I like that question. I have there's a few things that come to mind, but I think the one that really stands out is uh so it was 2020. I had quit my job to pursue my Airbnb business full time. That year was crazy. I also got divorced and sold my house. A lot was happening and I wasn't in a great spot. There like things were spiraling in a lot of different directions. I think some things were clear, but a lot wasn't. Long story short, I just really decided on a whim that I wanted to move to Sedona. And for those who aren't familiar, Sedona's a couple hours north of Phoenix. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful uh desert nature oasis kind of a
Oh,
spot.
so good.
really great spot. Population of 10,000, so pretty small. And honestly, I had not even spent much time in Sedona for being an Arizona native, but it just like became part of my awareness, and I woke up one day and was like, I'm moving to Sedona. I had no idea that it's really difficult to find long-term housing in Sedona. I went on online the next day. I found there was one apartment available for rent in Sedona. I called the person. Her name was Patricia. I met her the next day, drove up to Sedona, met her, and she is that person. It was so odd, and it was one of those things that I didn't realize as it was happening, but looking back, it's like, what in the world? Like, how serendipitous was that entire experience that I just go online one day, find the one apartment in all of Sedona, meet Patricia. Immediately upon meeting her, I'm like, there's something kindred about this relationship. I really, there seemed to be just a lot of immediate rapport between us there on the spot. I was like, yep, I want it. Like, where's the lease? I'm ready to sign it. I moved to Sedona a week or two later. Turns out she was in the process, her game plan with, there were 8 units and I was renting one of them. And her game plan from day one was to eventually turn these all to short-term rentals. And so she told me, she's like, yeah, I'm turning there, it's 3 triplexes. And she said, I'm turning that first block into short-term rentals first. I'm going to try it out for a year. If everything goes well, I'll do this one and then I'll do that one. And I was like, no way, that's my business. That's what I do. And it's cute because it was a very small business back then. So I really, love the part of me that was so confident in being like, no way, well, I can help you. That's what I do. And so I ended up cleaning for her. That helped me pay my rent while I was up there. Sedona's not a cheap place to live. And I did help her. And it turned into this very like symbiotic, I really believe that we've both been mentors for each other. Like I was a couple of steps ahead of her in the Airbnb game. She had gone to hospitality school in Europe, so she had this perspective that was a lot bigger than what I had been introduced to quite yet. And I learned so much from her, and cleaning her units with her eye and her attention to detail. Like, I thought that was my thing. It turns out it's her thing. It's our thing. But it was very humbling, but I learned so much. Long story short, now I'm actually going to be working with her on an even larger scale and helping to manage all 8 of those properties. So very interesting. Started out with just somebody who was my landlord, turned into a friendship, a mentorship, uh, and now she's going to be a client, and it's just one of the most perfect fits that I could possibly ask for.
Love that so incredibly much. Like, I just started, I just thought up this question, whatever, in the last like couple months, and asking this question is probably one of my favorite things now, because I just want to show people that the people that you get into your community, it's the most random. It's really random. Like,
Yeah,
it could be somebody you meet on a freaking sidewalk, and they could change your whole damn life. Like, it's such a cool
truly.
thing.
It's so true. I know, and that is a fun question. I want to think about it more because there are, and the thing is in that moment that it happens, you don't realize that it's happening. And I think that's like kind of the attitude that we have to live life with a little bit of like magic could be happening, uh, and be open to the possibility of it. It's like no day is boring, no day is meaningless. Like there's something that it can turn into.
Yeah, so it's just beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story with me. I'm
Yeah,
so pleased about
great
it.
question.
Uh, can you tell me, what do you think your superpower is?
I think something along the lines of communication. I think it's the thing that like the questions around, what's the thing that you love doing as a kid that you still enjoy doing? And I've always loved talking. And I remember like getting rides home from my friends' parents as like a really young kid and just talking to the mom or the dad, and like the kid would kind of get annoyed. They wanted to like play and like throw things at each other, and I'm just like having a chat with with the parent. Uh so yeah, I really enjoy not just talking, but but communicating. And there's other ways of doing that as well, but just uh learning about people, being curious about people, putting people at ease through conversation. um I think there's something there. I think I'd like to kind of lean more into that and figure out what's even at a deeper level than that, but something around that.
That's awesome. I'm glad you kind of know that about you because it's interesting to ask that to people because we all just think so differently. We think
Yeah.
differently about like the words that come out of other people's mouths and, you know, the context of what we apply it to and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
can you tell me what's the best advice someone has given you that you've actually used?
Hmm. The
Mhm.
best advice that someone's given me that I've actually used, um, that you create your reality. And I don't know if that's really advice as much as it's wisdom, but I there's been a few people in my life who have shared that message with me, but there's been two in particular that I've had an ongoing relationship, and one of them I sit in a women's circle and she leads that, and she's been one of my big teachers of that. But I really believe it. I really believe that we create our reality. It's something that feels kind of far out and can feel like, what does that mean? That's definitely how my partner responds to that. Like, well, what does that mean? And so it's come to really mean something to me. And I really think it's true. And I think you can see it play out in really small ways. Like one of the ways that I started really learning this for myself is actually in the short-term rental world. That's where I live. Realizing that how different my relationship was with each of my cleaners. Oh, we lost you. There you go. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
and it's okay. I don't know where, like it recorded all of it, so I'll just end up cutting some of it out.
Yep. Weird.
Did you finish that part of your story, or just pick up where
Let's
you want to?
I guess I was saying, okay, we create a reality, and realizing that through even the relationships that I have with some of the people, some of the cleaners that I work with, and realizing how different those relationships are. Uh, and I guess it still feels kind of abstract, but I guess it's just, noticing that each of those cleaners has such a different experience of me. And I can't help but think that those, I try to be the same in my responses to each of these cleaning people, but some of the relationships are just super positive, super optimistic. If something goes wrong, and it always does, there's like this attitude of like, we're going to work on this together and we're going to solve it. And I'm not, they have this trust that I'm not against them, that I'm on their team. And then there's this other type of cleaner that's not the feeling at all. It's like this constant, you're trying to nickel and dime me, or you're trying not to pay me as much as I, and that's not how I'm
Hmm.
feeling, but that's how they're feeling. And then just taking a step back and realizing, just like witnessing that of, this cleaner A versus cleaner B, their lives must feel so different. Like cleaner A, who feels like I'm constantly trying to take something away, versus cleaner B, who feels like I'm helping to build something. And I would like to believe that I'm acting the same in both of those experiences, yet
Hmm.
though. And so I don't know. There was a moment where that felt really big for me, where there were two specific cleaners that I was working with that were really like reflecting that back for me. And I'm like, dang, how how am I doing that? Like where am I? And that is like, these cleaners are creating their reality. We all
Yeah. This is like the best thing ever because I'm exploring this stuff right now. Is like everything, like we control everything. We control our emotions and I hear things like this all the time,
are.
but
Yep.
it hits home more than it ever has in my entire life because of some trainings I just recently did. And it's all about that. Is like if you think everybody is trying to nickel and dime you, you will create spots that everyone is always trying to nickel and dime you. Like you're going to bring that right in. Like if you think people are out to help you, you will always find people are coming to help you. If you think everybody in the world
Exactly.
is lazy, everybody in the world is going to look lazy compared to you. Like these
Exactly.
are 100% true statements that it's like you create this in your mind and that's what it's going to bring you. It's just
Yeah.
like the white car thing that everybody knows about. There's a piece in your brain that when you start looking, or, like you want a white car, like just say you want a white Bronco, like a Ford
Yeah.
Bronco. That's your dream. You are
Yep.
now going to see all the Ford white Broncos
Yep.
next to you on the highway, whereas you didn't see them before.
Yeah.
So the same thing applies with this. It's
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah, and
it's
it's
awesome.
not I still believed in it even when it felt very new agey and mystical. But I think what's interesting is I'm realizing it's really not. Like this is like common sense. Like you watch it in your life and it's happening. Like it's not it's really not overly overly mystical. It's just how it works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Okay, can you like made a small comment over there about you're in like some kind of women's group.
hmm
Tell me about what that looks like. Why did you like what kind of group is it and why did you join it?
Yeah, this one I so this group there's probably I think like our WhatsApp group is like 16 of us. And somebody like she's actually a real estate investor and leader in Phoenix. Not short-term rental side, very focused on real estate. And she has kind of like slowly been exiting that and wanting to do, I shouldn't say exit, she still does it, but she's been wanting to create like a circle of women to really just the goal of having more awareness and living life more consciously. And so I stumbled into that group like just like literally a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And the reason I was so open to it was because I have been in other women's circles. So coming out of my divorce in 2020, that was one of the first places that I went. I was raised quite religious, and when I kind of fell out of my religion, it was a little nutty. It was just like that very polarized swing from like a lot of very heavy dogmatic belief to what felt like absolutely nothing, and it like I didn't really know up from down, it felt like for several years. And I found that again in a women's circle. And I really found like spirituality again through other women. Like I think it's like something to say, something to be said about divine feminine. That means something to me. And this women's circle was just really powerful. It was just a lot of really honest talk with other women, all with the same intention of living life a little more consciously. And so that was back in 2020. I did that. I did like 3 rounds with that group. It was during COVID time, so it was all on Zoom. And so ever since then, I've just been really open to women's circles. And then this one just sort of like I mean, it's such a long story, but really it just fell into my lap where it was like, do you want to show up at this time on these days? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. So it's been a year. We've been meeting every month for a year. So we have our last circle this month, and then we're going to do a retreat in March. And then we'll see what happens after that. But I think circles of women, circles of anybody, but like for me, circles of women, it's been amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Have you ever created one of those because you needed one, or are you more of a I'm gonna hop in when someone else creates this and then you help as it goes along?
Yeah, I did host my first retreat last October. A good friend, Jen and I, who also met at Level Up Your Listing, Jen and I hosted it was a short-term rental focused retreat, all women. That was amazing. I definitely see more of that in my future. But honestly, for now, I I really I like participating for sure. I like participate if I can kind of find like a hybrid leadership role, and that's happened a handful of times where I sort of end up being the liaison between the participants and the facilitators, and that honestly is like my sweet spot. I feel like if I like being that go between where I can kind of get the best of both worlds, where I can be a full participant, but also be a little bit of a leader. And I think at this point, I have done enough women's circles that any of the circles that I'm in, I've usually sat in a few more circles than the other people in the circle. And that alone is just like maybe just a little bit braver to share and a little bit in a position to just kind of set the tone, if you will. So yeah, I think that's my sweet spot
That's
right now.
That's awesome. I love it because I'm kind of realizing, there's different roles to play in groups like that of like
Yeah,
some people are just participants and then some of it is about the season of life that you're in, like if you got little kids at home, I know that those people don't necessarily have time, but they still like to be included and then they might grow into
totally.
something different. So. It's cool to see the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. I've got two other random questions. Well, one super random question, the other one's very specific. Tell me, what's something you've been lazy at in your business? Like
Ooh.
super lazy.
Let's see. There's definitely a good one. Something I've been so lazy at. Yeah, maybe uh I mean, well, so something I had been very lazy about was building systems. I was keeping so much in my head and I was hearing all of this, like, you got to have a system, you got to have a system. I'm like, yeah, I got a system. It's right here. It's in my brain. Um, I was very resistant to like writing it out and writing out like this is the job role, this is the responsibility, these are the tasks. I'm not lazy about that anymore. Now I've like kind of flipped on the other side because I realize how much freedom there is in just spelling it out. But I was very lazy about that for a long time. Right now in my business, I think the thing I'm lazy about is switching to virtual guest guides. I think it's like really, very, really important for where I'm at in my business. And for a long time, I actually was very hard on the side of I believe in physical guest guides in the home, and some of me still does. But it's just one of those things that as we scale, I don't want us to have to like run around town swapping out pieces of paper.
Pages.
Yeah,
Yep,
for for
pages.
for important information, for like things
Mhm.
that actually really matter. And so I think it's been made pretty clear to me that it's time to do virtual guest guides. There's some really cool options out there.
Mhm.
But it's so much work to just make a switch like that once, there's 18 properties. It's just I don't love that type of work. I don't love that type of like monotonous task-based work. So I do have a team that helps me out, but a lot of that is going to fall on me. So I've been lazy about
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say some of that you could totally shift to somebody else's. Like we actually ended up going with every one of our. We've never had paper guides. We have
it.
been asked
Really,
twice in 4 years
really.
or 5 years that we've been hosting. We've been asked twice about it,
That's good to
and
hear.
everybody hasn't. And but we give a link. We have a website for every single one of our houses. It's really
Yeah.
just a house page, is what I call it. And
Yeah.
and we built one house page, and then they're all copied and pasted. And then certain pieces are, like here's distances to things that you might need to care about. Here's the closest grocery stores, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But short-term rental land does have some really cool, like, I mean, there like I think Touch Stay is one of
Touch
it. I
stay.
know there's
Yeah.
a handful of them that it's like
Yep.
it will literally do that for you. Like all
I
those
know.
distances, it'll find all that for you.
That's
Um,
what I'm going to be using Touch Stay, and that's what
mhm,
I've been setting up. And it is so cool. And actually, I got introduced to them from Jen, my friend who I hosted that retreat with, and we used Touch Stay as our retreat guide or our retreat yeah, guide. In fact, Level
mhm,
Up Your Listing used it as well.
yeah,
And that was like I was like, okay, this is good. This is very easy.
yeah.
I always think like, is this something my 84-year-old dad could do? And it's like, yeah, I think it is. And
I think
it's
it's
very
excellent.
easy. It looks so good.
Mhm.
So yeah, but it is a lot of work to set it up. And there's just no way around it. Anytime you're putting together a good guest guide, you're gonna be spending some time. But once
Yeah.
you have that initial template, it's just
Yeah, it's
drag
just
and drop.
copy and paste for a
Yeah.
lot of things, and that's the reason that we did the house. Like we have, like I said, we have just a house website for each one, and we've got like anytime we get a frequently asked question, we update that and do what we need to. But it's been
Cool.
so easy, and sometimes I have to remind people that it exists.
Yeah.
But
Is that
mostly,
for long-term rentals? Is that for your
no,
long-term? That's for
no,
short-term.
we don't
Okay.
have any. We don't have any long term rentals. We
Okay.
only have
Okay.
short term
Yeah.
rentals,
So those
and
are,
yeah.
and it's just a website that you've created that you've made the house.
Yeah, we have our main website, and honestly I want to send more people to our website in general because I want them to know it exists for when they leave, that it's
Yeah.
like, hey, next time you come back, book direct. So we send people to the website, and then each house just has their own site. So one of our houses is called Groveland Inn, so
Yeah.
Groveland Inn has their site. All of the closest 911 situation,
Yep.
closest fire department, like that kind of stuff is on there. All of our house rules, all of our, hey, if you lose something, if you break something, just let us know, like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just makes it
Works.
easy. I've
That's
always
awesome.
wanted to do a touch stay, and I'm just like, I don't know, what we have is really great. And then we
Absolutely.
have, I maintain a big, huge list called Twin Cities Best because I'm in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and we call it Twin Cities.
Yeah.
So I just put our favorite restaurants and our favorite
Yeah.
breakfast spots and our favorite coffee shops, and our
Yeah.
houses are within vicinities of that
Yeah.
anyway. So I'm like, because if somebody wants to come and they have a bachelorette party, they
Yep.
don't want to hang out in Macgroveland, which is where our houses are. Like the
Yeah.
likelihood is they want to go to some fun bars. So no matter what, they're gonna have to go somewhere else, like still within the city. So
Yeah.
we just kind of have that within
Yeah.
there.
I
And
I
then,
like that.
if somebody like one time somebody asked for like where's the closest pool or splash pad,
Yep.
people ask for beaches in Minnesota, and Minnesota's beaches, that's not necessarily so like you have to
Doesn't
find
work.
out what their mindset is. Yeah, like you have to ask that guy, like, do you know about Minnesota beaches? They're not like beaches. We have lakes, and
Yeah.
lakes are clean like beaches, or I mean, we just they're not fancy.
Yeah.
So anytime we get those kinds of questions, then we go and do the deep dive, figure out like where are all the splash pads, where are all the pools. We put
Yeah.
that into like a blog post so that we can send it out and
I
say
like
like,
that.
here, this is great. And then it's just kind of it's just like your FAQ. It's like the reason you have an
Totally.
FAQ is because somebody asked that question,
Yep.
whether it's weird or not. You're just like, well, here's the info, and that applies to all of our houses. You
Yep.
know,
I love
so,
that. I think that's getting more and more important. And yeah, that's basically what I've been lazy
mhm.
about. So, because that's all I'm like, yep, that's, and I think, you gotta find the motivation, of course, to do it. But I think that's what we're really seeing is that those are the things that are setting apart the hosts that I think are here to stay and the hosts that are maybe here today, gone tomorrow is finding ways to do those extras without it being like a huge lift. And I think if it's just your habit to respond to guest inquiries in that way of answering it for every guest from here on out who asks about
Yeah, for
splash
the to
pads
the
or
end of time.
yeah, and then that's awesome. That's really cool. I like
Yeah,
that.
no, it's neat to, this is the reason I love collaboration within short-term rentals is
Yeah,
just the industry is so friendly and people, I mean, you can still find the meanies, but mostly like when you have a collaboration, like you were just talking about, you create your reality every single day. So if you
yep,
have the reality that people are going to help you and that you can
totally.
share ideas like this, like what works in Minnesota doesn't always work in Arizona,
Right.
but there's vice versa, but there's just always so many cool things to learn. So
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah,
I
it's
agree
pretty
with
cool.
that.
So okay, last question of the day. What are you looking for right now?
I'm very focused on growing my short-term rental management portfolio. So that's the last year has been all about doing all the systems that I was so resistant to doing for a little while, and setting up the team and just getting a bunch of stuff off of my plate so that I can be more focused on growth. So it feels so good and I've been doing so much reflecting with the new year. It's like that's where I'm at. We have bandwidth. We're ready to grow. In this exact moment, we are already onboarding all the homes that we have capacity for. So it'll be another month or two, but it's we'll be ready to take on a few more come February or March. So yeah, it's all about growing and also but with the right partners and with the right homes. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that I have a lot uh more clarity around than I have in the past. So that feels
That's
good. Finding the right
fantastic.
clients. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very happy to hear you say something like that because I think a lot of people like I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and people are just like, "Well, how do I convince him to hire me?" And then you read the rest of the story and you're like, run away from that client.
Yeah,
They are not a good partner."
exactly.
So, knowing that the house
Totally.
is the right fit for your portfolio because, you know, I mean, somebody who only shopped at Goodwill and it's kind of like a college style, like here, if you're in college, you're going to love this short-term rental.
Yep.
And if that fits with the rest of your portfolio, that's awesome. But if you only have luxury or if you only have family stays, like maybe that's not a good fit. So just knowing
Yeah,
that ahead of time and then knowing that, a client needs to be a good fit. It's just like it's a
absolutely.
partnership.
Yeah, like having some brand integrity, I think is what. And it's not about right and wrong. It's just about what is you, what fits you, what are you best at handling, what is that combination of client and house, and sticking to that and not being ashamed to say no when it's not a fit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, tell my people how they find you. What's the easiest way?
Instagram is definitely where I'm most active. So at Air Brindy on Instagram. And yeah, I mean, for any brand new host, I host a free intro to hosting webinar for Airbnb. And you can message me on Instagram and happy to share that with you. But those are the two places, my free intro to hosting webinar and on Instagram.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll throw that in the show notes. And Brindy, I really appreciate you sharing all of this stuff with me. And thank you very much for taking the time to hang out. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Had lots of fun. Thanks, Tanya.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.